Hello, America. This is Call of Duty Goddess. Today is June the 30th, 2016. I'm going to kick off the series that I'm going to be doing because it's going to take a while to show you how the Muslim Brotherhood has infected our country. I'm at the American report at the Betrayal papers, and that's where we're going to start. And I'm going to put in some aspects of this that comes from the study of eschatology. The reason I feel that eschatology has a big part in this is because I believe that the Quran was written by a person who studied the books of the Bible, which had not been written yet, but the books were around, trust me. Speaking of books, who took books, all the important books, and kept them and burned everyone else's? So, when you look at this from a standpoint with what's going on today, and you look at a biblical aspect of it from the Quran, from the Christian biblical perspective, you'll see things maybe in a different light. So, I'll try to put that in there as much as I can. We'll get into that as we go through the Betrayal papers. Now, another huge place to find how our government has been taken over most recently by the Muslim Brotherhood is Judicial Watch. They have done so much in this aspect. I went to Judicial Watch in their little search box there, and I typed in U.S. Purges law enforcement training materials about Muslims. I found 18 results. And you can look at this. And this gets very deep. A lot of information here. It's been taking me so long because it's hard to compile all this information. We've been so infected for so long. Anyway, back to the Betrayal papers. Let's get started. Betrayal papers part 1. Under Obama, the U.S. captured by the Muslim Brotherhood. That was from March 1st, 2015. The Betrayal papers will trace the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Obama administration's foreign and domestic policies. The 5-part series will present a picture of a conspiracy that is manipulating the American government to the benefit of a totalitarian, genocidal movement that seeks to establish a global Islamic state. The Muslim Brotherhood is an international, political, financial, terrorist, and movement whose goal is to establish a global Islamic state, which is a caliphate. They have and continue to exert tremendous influence of the American government's foreign and domestic policies under President Barack Hussein Obama. The violence in the Middle East and across North Africa is a direct consequence of the Muslim Brotherhood's effective control over American foreign policy in the region. They operate through various civic front groups as well as through American institutions who take their money as operational funding. For instance, Georgetown University. What is Georgetown University? That's a Jesuit college. The Brookings Institution is mainly funded by the Muslim Brotherhood. How many times have you seen the Brookings Institute referred to on reports from the media? Let's continue. In America, we have a weak and struggling economy, growing public and private debt, and millions are and underemployed. While a weaponized IRS targets Tea Party groups and other voices of liberty, and military veterans are labeled as domestic terrorists by the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government refuses to secure the southern border. Educational policy now includes the teaching of Arabic and visits to mosques for school children. Internationally, America is in retreat. The Middle East is in ashes and in the midst of an ongoing genocide repeat with daily horrors, the likes which have not been seen for centuries. Former allies have been abandoned and are embittered under the present leadership in the White House and State Department. Israel is considered the aggressor and Hamas the oppressed. Now we'll get into Israel quickly. Who created Israel? Rothschild. We see that in letters in reference to the Balfour Declaration, way before the Jewish state of Israel was ever incepted. So, therefore, what is Israel? It's a part of the crown, because Rothschild is a royalty. We became subjects of them in 1913. A lot of people believe it was before then, but the concrete evidence is America is subjected to the Queen, when the Federal Reserve was created, and when we totally went off the gold standard was just another nail in the coffin, possibly the final nail in the coffin. So, Israel is considered the aggressor and Hamas the oppressed. What else did Barack Hussein do when he got in? He used the Cloward and Piven strategy to deplete our economy, to take it down the rest of the way from what the Bush administration had started. And many administrations had started before then. So let's continue. In sum, the world is at its most volatile point since the outbreak of World War II. If you think that this is a result of something other than incompetent, stupid, or clueless president, words regularly used by those who sense something is wrong but can't quite bring themselves to own up to the ugly truth, you're not alone. Millions of Americans are realizing that the Obama administration is not merely misguided. It is actually and consciously anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and broadly anti-Western. Yet the American public does not fully appreciate why and how the administration always finds itself square against everything this country is based on: religious freedom, capitalism, and justice under law. This series of articles will explain the force and mechanics behind Obama's anti-American global agenda, the Muslim Brotherhood, the root of today's Islamic evil. Founded in 1928, the Muslim Brotherhood, also known as the Society of Muslim Brothers, or Ikhwan, is an international movement, some would argue an international conspiracy, that seeks to establish a worldwide Islamic state or caliphate. When it was created in the late 1920s, the Brotherhood was a contemporary of the Nazi Party of Germany. Indeed, the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, Amin al-Husseini, is considered by some as the man who catalyzed the Holocaust. For it was only after Husseini visited Hitler in Berlin in 1941 that the systematic extermination of Jews and other minorities began with industrial efficiency. Now I have to add to this, I've heard on YouTube someone that I listen to, not often, but I listened to them. I thought they had some really good videos. They did flat out denied the Holocaust, flat out denied that the killings of Jews took place. I hear a lot of people flat out denying that the killing of people are taking place up to today. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you think that these people, these psychopaths that are in control of the world that we live in, if you think for 1 minute that they care one iota about your life, you're out of your mind. You're sadly mistaken. They will kill you in the drop of a hat. Do you know why? Because dead men tell no tales. And if you think that all these so-called crisis actors are out there, if you think that crisis actors, if they are hired to pretend like they're dead, if you think that these people are alive and well and out there, and if you think the elite are going to take a chance on these people perhaps telling the secret and proving there is a secret and a conspiracy, you're crazy. They're dead. They're dead. These psychopaths don't care about death. They only care about their life. They don't care about your death. These psychopaths needed Israel. They needed Israel, and they needed to call themselves Jews, because there are passages in the Bible that say that Jews are the chosen ones. And then you get a bunch of so-called preachers that belong to a secret society to preach to people in churches that the Jews are the chosen one. We need to be behind the Jews. Well, then you got it covered, don't you? If you think that a bunch of Jews weren't killed for the Rothschilds to take over Israel, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. They were killed. They were exterminated. Just like the Armenian genocide, Christians were killed and exterminated. Let's continue. After the war, despite the insistence by many wartime leaders, Churchill included, that he be brought to justice, Husseini escaped to the Middle East. He lived there until his death in the 1970s, serving as a mentor to a young Yasser Arafat. Husseini and the Nazi Party are the connection points between the Holocaust and today's Middle Eastern genocide. The Allies' conscious failure to arrest and prosecute Husseini haunts us today, a terror hedge against Stalin and Soviet Russia. At the beginning of the Cold War, working with former Nazis, the American CIA began to court the Muslim Brotherhood as an ally against Soviet Russia. This calculus may have made sense when facing down Joseph Stalin, a totalitarian tyrant hell-bent on world domination, but it has proved a costly strategy in the long run. In this, when you look at us using the CIA at that time against Soviet Russia, we use the phrase, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why do we use that phrase? Because the Muslims hated communism. We hated communism. Did they not know that Sharia was connected to communism? I beg to differ. I believe they knew. When you look at Albert Pike, when you look at the 3 world wars he wrote, and I question if he even wrote them myself, but when you look at Albert Pike and you look at him being the head of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry and enfolding the Shriners in, they knew what Sharia was because he did that after the Barbary Wars. Thomas Jefferson bought a Quran during these wars to know his enemy. America then had Qurans written up and explicitly said, read this book to the people. I'm pretty sure that Albert Pike read that book. I'm pretty sure he knew what this religion did. That is why I believe we used them and said, oh, it's just because the Muslims don't like communism. The reason that the Muslims didn't like communism is because Russia was a country that would not let anyone in. The Muslims couldn't get in to take over their country. What is the Muslim's sole purpose is to spread Islam throughout the world. That is why the Muslims hated communism. Now, you can tell an idiot that hasn't read the Quran that and they'll believe it. But the people up at the top knew, because who's up at the top? Who created Israel? Rothschild. Israel is nothing but a creation of the Queen. It's the Queen's land. It's Rothschild's land. The Rothschild family was made into royalty after he overtook the Queen financially. Now, another thing, the Catholic Church, Brookings Institute, Jesuits, where do they come into this? Let's look at this from an eschatological point of view. Muhammad, when he was alive, it said that he wrote the Quran. Well, Muhammad's first wife was a nun. She lived in a convent. Muhammad was illiterate. He couldn't write. He couldn't read. He was a crazy man who loved killing people. Okay? Are you starting to see the whole picture now for what it really is? Here, Husseini speaking with Hitler, the guy who started the Muslim Brotherhood. Guess who Hitler's related to? The Queen of England. Seriously. There was a story, it was a couple years ago. Let me see if I can find it. A lot of people are saying Queen Elizabeth is Hitler's niece. Hello. True or not, I don't know. But there is Nazi roots in the House of Windsor. Now, I've been talking about a kingdom. And my goodness, it's like the Game of Thrones. I should be playing that music. So in essence, folks, what I'm laying out to you is Muhammad did not write the Quran. It was written in a freaking monastery. His first wife was a nun. Secret societies, okay? Who were the first people who joined up in the secret societies, in the perfectibilists, which then became the Illuminati? Who joined those clubs? The elite. Royalty joined in these clubs. Why did they join in these clubs? To get together to take over the globe. Okay? Plain and simple. They used religions control the people's minds, especially back then. So let's continue. In the years and decades that followed World War II, the Muslim Brotherhood has evolved into a modern-day Nazi international, not unlike the old Comintern, Communist International. It has a vast network of financial and business interests across the world. It has agents, supporters, and apologists within Western governments, and it has a support network of civic organizations in the West. These all serve as a cover for its darker and insatiably violent ambitions. For despite all their intrigue and political gamesmanship, the Muslim Brotherhood is not strictly a political movement or a financial cabal. It's also the mothership of virtually all Islamic terrorist groups operating in the world today, including Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, the Taliban, Boko Haram, and many more. Now let's look at this for what it truly is. Here they are. They've got Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, the Taliban, Boko Haram, and many more. Al-Qaeda is against the Jews. Okay, Rothschild was a Jew. Or was he? My belief that Rothschild had his own religion created, called Zionism. And that is where it comes into the fact that he's using Christianity and the people now that live in Israel to fight for him, so to speak, to keep the people behind Israel, to make Israel look like it's something that it's not. It's complete cover. All three major religions are used. We've all been used. We've all been indoctrinated to believe one thing or the other. Rothschild doesn't give a crap about these people being killed. Who created ISIS? The Mossad, MI6, and CIA. They created ISIS. But the Muslims are joining in happily. Do you know why? Because 2 years ago, the caliphate was called. So, yay! It's easy for the CIA, the MI6, and the Mossad to get the Muslims to join in under them to help them with the caliphate, with the global takeover. The Mossad, CIA, and MI6, they're all the crown. They're all the crown. Does the crown work for the Vatican, or does the Vatican work for the crown? Or are they conjoined in one? We'll have to figure that out. But let's keep going, because the Jews, the Jewish people that live in Israel, are being used just like the American people that live in America, just like the Muslim people that read the Quran. But the only difference between the three is the Muslim people that read the Quran are indoctrinated straight out of the Quran. And if they don't believe fully what's in the Quran, then when they go to mosque, they're indoctrinated the rest of the way. And then you have your little offshoots like Nation of Islam and stuff like that. And the Black Panther and the white supremacist group, what's that? The Ku Klux Klan. Come on. It's to keep all of us fighting between each other so we can kill off each other. They can make new laws to clamp down on us even more, while the elite sit up there and drink their wine and tea and just have a blast. So let's continue. Such groups, all children of the Muslim Brotherhood's fanatical Islamic ideology, are today ethnically cleansing countries such as Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Nigeria of all traces of Christianity. No less than the president of Egypt, Muslim Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, a devout Muslim, has said as much. Considering how the Muslim Brotherhood and their terrorist pawns treat fellow Muslims in Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Iraq, butchering them by the bushel, including women and children, it should come as no surprise that Egypt and Saudi Arabia have declared them a terrorist organization. Now, Saudi Arabia. Who put the House of Saud in there? It was the crown. It was the Queen. So, of course, the Queen is going to protect Saudi Arabia. Why is the Queen going to protect Saudi Arabia? Because of all the oil there. Because the Queen and the crown and whoever is behind her or over top of her or with her is protecting the oil. That's all they care about. Let's continue. It should come as no surprise that the United Arab Emirates has designated Muslim Brotherhood front groups operating in the United States terrorist entities. Who was in on Operation Zero Footprint? United Arab Emirates. Who has a lot of oil? The UAE. In November, the UAE effectively declared that the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, and Muslim American Society, MAS, were no different than Al-Qaeda. Why? It's because they share a common origin, the Muslim Brotherhood. One could add to this list of domestic terrorist collaborators and enablers the Islamic Society of North America, or ISNA, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, MPAC, and the Muslim Students Association. All of these places, like the UAE, they have a lot of oil. And if they're not owned by the crown and can't be taken over by the Muslim Brotherhood, well, guess who attacks them? ISIS. Let's continue. A new headquarter in America. Equally alarmingly, all American institutions such as Georgetown University, a Jesuit college, and the Brookings Institution have accepted so much money from the Muslim Brotherhood government in Qatar, who was also part of the arming of the Libyan rebels in Operation Zero Footprint, that their political positions are virtually indistinguishable from the Muslim Brotherhood's domestic front groups. Seeing the picture now, guys? I hope so. Yet the United States government does not see these organizations and their employees as the enemy, as apologists for the worst kinds of barbarity. In fact, the highest profile people from these organizations advise the Obama administration, including the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the National Security Council. In January, the Department of State actually welcomed the Muslim Brotherhood to a meeting, and shortly thereafter, Egypt exploded in jihadi violence. This is no magical coincidence. To the detriment of our safety and well-being, the domestic Muslim Brotherhood front groups help dictate counterterrorism policies. It is their influence which leads to the farcical idea, recently expressed by Obama at the National Prayer Breakfast, that the Crusades had something to do with ISIS and the mass murder of innocents in the Middle East today. Well, I would agree with him. Because guess who created Islam? The same organization that ordered the Crusades. So let's continue. These front groups shape our foreign policy, which since the Arab Spring and continuing to this day is on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood. Who created that Arab Spring? I don't think it was just a coincidence. I believe it was operatives of the MI6, the Mossad, and the CIA, which created the Arab Spring. I believed it got the Muslims going, so to speak. They started it and the Muslims followed because of what's in their book and what's preached in their mosques. They can be easily led into a rebellion, into a war, into the senseless murder and killing of people. So-called moderate Muslims employed at these front groups have been the country of Qatar, a totalitarian Sharia-based society, and an ATM for terrorists, the closest ally of the United States under Obama's presidency. With enthusiasm from Obama and Eric Holder, they have us emptying Guantanamo Bay of the most vicious killers and sending them to Qatar with only the vaguest of security assurances. The remaining 4 articles will explore the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood on American policy, both foreign and domestic, including in Common Core, Obama's position on illegal immigration and amnesty, and the hostility of the administration towards police officers. The expose will also detail the operatives in the government who work to advance the Muslim Brotherhood's ambitions for a worldwide caliphate. And it will put into context the mysterious influence that George Soros and Valerie Jarrett have over Barack Hussein Obama, his administration, and the policies that affect every American. Oh boy, I can't wait to talk about them. So, this will be part 1, and I'll be doing part 2 here shortly, which will include part 2 of the Betrayal papers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something, and maybe you have something to add to this. I so enjoy looking at your comments and getting your intellect in this as well. This is Call of Duty Goddess signing off, and as always, I've got your 6.